Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This video is a dungeon review of a level 16 Rookery dungeon which I've recently played on my Oracle Discipline Priest. The purpose of this video is to look at the main challenges associated with this dungeon from the perspective of a healer and to discuss how Oracle Priest's toolkit is best suited for dealing with these challenges. We'll also discuss some strategies for cooldown management, as well as some general problems which arise in the course of the dungeon, especially in the second half of the dungeon where it becomes more difficult. Now we do a Bloodlust pull here in the beginning. It's not very noteworthy, especially if you abuse this little bit of a cheese by standing on this ledge up here, which prevents you from being hit by the frontal of the mob, even if it is targeted directly at you, and you can just use this strategy to not get hit by it. But the first pull generally is very easy and you don't need to use many of your cooldowns. I use my premonition of insight here, to get the cooldown rotating. It also does a little bit of DPS, of course, but from a healing perspective it's not necessary, and you might also choose to hold it for the beginning of this room, where the Void Riders, as you can see we have pulled one of them here, they do this AoE on the ground, and then about 5 seconds later they go into an ability called Localized Storm, which is going off right now, and it does a lot of pulsing AoE group damage. And yeah, you should not be afraid to use your cooldowns when it is going off. I was a little bit, I used my premonition of Solace here, as well as my premonition of Piety to get through the first one. Unfortunately, I put the Solace shield on the tank, which was a big mistake on my part, because the tank really doesn't need the healing in this AoE situation, but yeah, I didn't manage that correctly. And now for the second one, I used the Pain Sub here in the end out of a little bit of a panic, but it actually didn't end up doing anything. I wouldn't have minded to see myself use my Evangelism as well, just to be extra safe. I did get through it without the use of any additional cooldowns, but especially since you don't need any cooldowns for the boss, you can be relatively free in terms of using your cooldowns on the trash packs, so that none of them are available when you pull the boss. Now the second danger in this area of the dungeon comes from the Cursed Thunderers, who cast Lightning Bolt at individual players, dealing a lot of damage. And you can see we don't have very many stops in our group, all of them are on cooldown now, and that obviously makes this part of the dungeon a little bit more challenging, especially at even higher key levels where the mobs don't die as quickly. As a priest, you can sort of tune out of these problems, because you don't have an interrupt, so you don't need to worry about it per se, but obviously you still need to worry about the damage which is going out. Now we do a little bit of a bigger pull, including again a Void Rider, and you can see the ground AoE from the Void Rider is going off, moving out of it, and now getting ready, Power Word Radiance, getting ready for the Localized Storm. My Radiance did not hit my Evoker. Probably a line of sight issue, I would think, otherwise I can't really explain it. And again, I'm a little bit hesitant to use many of my cooldowns. I'm not particularly happy with this. I have quite a few cooldowns available, and I should have used them much more freely. But I think I made a mental note. I can remember, oh, that was a little bit closer than I would have liked it to be. And now comes the next one, Radiance into Insight, into Penance, Penance, Smite, Penance. So a little bit of efficiency gain from Smite there, but rather be safe than sorry. Cast 3 penances in a row and forget about it. But a more efficient rotation would be Penance Smite, but yeah, I think it was fine. And now we go into the last pull of this area, and I really shouldn't mind using all of my remaining cooldowns here, even though they probably won't be necessary. As a priest, if you have an add-on that shows you who is being targeted by which spells, you can make it so that you shield the players who are being targeted by the spells currently, just in case that spell does go off, which it shouldn't usually. Then the player is shielded and has a higher chance of living through it. Anyway, we do rather well. We did CC one of the Thunderers just to be more safe because of the few stops which we have available. It's obviously a bit of an efficiency loss, just hitting him now for another 45 seconds or so before pulling the boss. But yeah, maybe we could have pulled the boss on top of it, I suppose. But with the damage we have, we are feeling pretty confident that we can time the key even with a little bit of efficiency loss along the way. Now this boss is one of the easiest bosses in the current season and definitely the easiest one in this dungeon. Basically, he just does this AoE, which you just saw. It does a moderate amount of damage. You really don't need to be too worried about getting one shot, even if you don't use it defensive. And then you need to heal up the group before this pulsing AoE dance event happens, which does a reasonable amount of damage, but as you can see, even on level 16, just use Powered Radiance and Penance and you are more than fine usually. And then the sequence just repeats. One thing of note that I would want to talk about is your cooldown. You can use this boss to reset your cooldowns. So you can see I have my Premonition of Solace available. What I would like to see myself do is cycle my premonitions in such a way that I have Clairvoyance available when the boss dies. So my most powerful premonition for the next part of the dungeon is available, as well as Ultimate Penitence and all my other healing CDs, because there's really no use in using them on this boss. We're now going to skip ahead because yeah, there's not much more happening here, and spoiler alert, we do manage to kill it. And now we jump down as I struggle to find my feather here. I previously played very much Evoker a lot, and there I usually just jump down without the feather, so yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. Now in this area of the dungeon we have the Coalescing Void Diffusers. As you can see, by the way, before the pull really starts, you can already begin Shadow at Pain and then spread it once for some additional spreading of your dots and additional healing as well. Now the Coalescing Void Diffusers, they go into an AoE damage event in Attracting Shadows, and it does a reasonable amount of damage, and you shouldn't be afraid to use some of your cooldowns here to be able to heal through it. Also, here you can see it's going off and everybody is dropping quite low. Again, I put my shield on the tank. That's really something that I need to... although the tank is taking a bit of damage here, so it's not completely a bad play. But for AoE events, you really don't want to put the Solace Shield on the tank. So I used Clairvoyance here, and we go into the next pack. Again, we have one of these Void Diffusers with Attracting Shadows, and they also cast Arcing Void. You can see it on me. You can line of sight this, but I managed not to do that. But I should do that in the future. And yeah, so you'd always want to run into a corner when you have the Arcing Void on you, and then nobody will take any damage. You can see it's on a Shadow Priest right now. He runs to the corner. And again, we have Attracting Shadows cast. And you can see, I'm not sure if this is new, I don't remember it being like this, that every time I line of sight this, the Arcing Void debuff just goes out again on someone else, until now the Shadow Priest gets hit and it stops. So I think they have kind of changed that you can no longer avoid it without it being recast all the time, which obviously still means that it can be avoided, but makes it much more difficult to avoid it. Yeah, anyway, I was a little bit hesitant to use more of my cooldowns on these fights, because the next pack is really packing a punch, because we do a Bloodlust pull of the two Coalescing Void Diffusers, so you have the same thing that we saw now, but you have it twice with the double Attracting Shadows cast and IPI our Evoker, and then I go into Insight, Penance, Penance, Penance. So no messing around with weaker healing combinations than just 3 successive penances. And this seems to have been enough to get through it. And we'll probably be getting a second set of Attracting Shadows. There it starts. And I use the Radiance. I think I'm ready to use my Evangelism here, but it's not needed because the mobs have already died. By the way, I used my Luminous Barrier. I accidentally specced into Luminous Barrier because I wanted to try it out and I didn't really know what it did. It's for those of you who don't know, it's the talent choice node which you can spec into instead of power word barrier, so the dome you put on the ground, reducing damage by 20%, and this luminous barrier applies a shield to everyone. It's not a particularly strong shield, and it heals about like 7 million for a button press, but if you find yourself underusing your power word barrier, because it can feel a little bit clunky to use, especially when playing with randoms and they don't walk into it and so on, and I'm certainly guilty of underusing it some of the time, then speccing it to luminous barrier, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's not super terrible. The button actually feels reasonably okay to press. And now on this boss, the main challenge is to juggle those corruption debuffs around. And especially when someone has the corruption debuff, like our evoker did right now, on them, and the crush reality jump is going off at the same time, this is where there is a risk of someone dying, and someone may or may not die in this fight. I make no promises. Other than that, yeah, you just need to heal people back up, and you need to be careful that if you have the corruption debuff on you, and you pass it on to another player, it will always be passed on to the player standing nearest to you, that ideally you run away. Okay, so the evoker is going to pass it over to me, and now I'm the last one in the chain, so it isn't a problem, but otherwise my positioning wouldn't have been that good. Yeah. Okay, let's skip ahead a little bit here, because I think here's a bit of a unfortunate overlap coming up. So the next corruption set, I think, is the problem. So Crush Reality is going out. I go for Ultimate Penitence, not because it's strictly necessary at this point, but I use it because I know I won't need it in the next couple of minutes, and so I use it to deal some additional damage. And now the corruption is handed over to me, and you can see this is the overlap I've been speaking of. I have the corruption, I have, and the Crush Reality is going out, and now you can see I don't have Fade for my damage reduction, and I will be pressing it in a second. I also don't have shield, so I'm trying to use the defensives that I need. I also cast Power Word, Shadow Word Death in the exact second, so I even get a little bit of an extra hit from that. I have these defensives on cooldown, and I don't realize fast enough that they are on cooldown. So you can see Fade, Shield, but they don't go off, and I die. It should be noted that my gear also isn't that good. I checked in the logs, it's very close how I died. So it was like 70k overkill, and I have like 670 item level, I think, 672 or something. So with a little bit better gear, I probably would have been fine at this point. But obviously it was a mistake. I very easily could have used my Desperate Prayer and been 100% fine. And actually, that's a big gameplay mistake of mine. I don't use Desperate Prayer anywhere near enough. By the way, you can just dispel the Feasting Void with your Mass Dispel, which is pretty strong here. As a Discipline Priest or as a priest, you really don't struggle very much with these debuffs if you do it like that. And we even have two priests. I'm not sure if our Shadow Priest had Mass Dispel in this dungeon or not. But yeah, but with Radiance and some other spells, you can usually also clear it rather well. And as Mass Dispel is on a cooldown of 2 minutes, you also can't use it for every Feasting Void cast, so you need to find ways to work around that. Now we decide to jump onto this platform, but I don't have the glider thing, so... But we have a lot of movement abilities in this group, so our Evoker grips up our other priest, and the other priest grips up me. And we are fine, so we skip a part of this dungeon. Our Evoker draws aggro here, unfortunately, and gets one shot. And here we have again one more Void Ascendant. I'm not really afraid of one of these Void Ascendants. You can see probably in a moment Feasting Void will be going out. I have Premonition of Piety available. I'm wondering whether or not I would like to see myself use it for this pull, just to get the cooldown rolling to cycle into my more powerful premonitions for the next pulls. But I decide to use it now, which I suppose is also fine. Use this part of the fight before the damage goes out for spreading some Shadow Word Pain. And if I remember correctly, so we have 2 of them now actually, so it's even a little bit more to heal, so requiring some usage of cooldowns. If I remember correctly, I'm dying in this pull. Let's see what happens. So at this point, not particularly spectacular. Okay, Feasting Void is here. I have Master Spell available. I should probably have cast it immediately. But when something is on cooldown, I don't have an add-on that shows me my cooldowns when they come back up in the middle of the screen. I've seen that a couple of times, but I find it a little bit too jarring. So I don't use my Master Spell, but managed to heal it off relatively well. But it goes out immediately again. This might be a moment for some premonition of Solace. You can see I'm being targeted by the Void Bolt, I have the Feasting Void debuff, and I'm also being targeted by the Void Crush. And so there's a triple overlap here, and yeah, I do use my Fade, but I had to use a shield, probably, a Pain Sub probably, because I did Flash Heal myself, so the shield wouldn't have done much more, but I had to use Pain Sub on myself in order to live here. But I just didn't see the triple overlap coming. I thought I was super safe, but yeah, that's where some more situational awareness can certainly help in avoiding these kinds of situations. However, it was also a little bit unfortunate that we have double Feasting Void going off from the last pack still. Even though it's not that hard to deal with, you can see we are not using that many of our cooldowns for these situations. Now we have the first Void Stone here. I don't know exactly when they do it, but I think this is the timer here. Is it? Yeah, he goes for a cast. No, it's not the timer. I don't know. I'm not really sure when exactly the Void Stone does his AoE. I think maybe at 50% HP or something. But at some point he will start pulsing AoE damage, and it really does quite a lot of damage. So you would want to be ready for it. And there it is. And I use my premonition of Clairvoyance immediately. And now I spam some Smite for the next damage event to go off. And again, spam Smite, spam Smite, spam Smite. And for the next one, which isn't coming up because we have a lot of damage, I would still have another Penance available. And now I can move into this, one of the most difficult packs of the dungeon, because it has a Void Stone and a Void Ascendant. With my Premonition of Insight ready, as well as my Luminous Barrier, and essentially I have all my cooldowns, so there's really not much to be worried about. But then again, it's not that difficult anyway if you know what you're doing, and especially if you have Master Spell. I would think I Dispel here. Yeah, I Dispel. Missed the Priest, unfortunately, but he is dispelled anyway. And now let's see if we are able to kill this Void Ascendant before the Void Stone goes into his AoE event, and also before the Void Ascendant casts his next Feasting Void, but we are not, probably, yeah, there it is, we're not able to do this, so I go immediately into Insight, and here, against my own advice, I use Insight to apply an instant cast Radiance to immediately take a lot of damage off all of these debuffs, and then I go into Dispel. And Dispel's cooldown actually resets, so I could have also used the second Dispel. So not the perfect use of my Insight there, but it's definitely sufficient in this situation. And here again we have this AoE. I have instant cast Radiance available, using it now. And then use shields on cooldown. I have my Luminous Barrier, which I could use now. I'm underusing it for sure, because I don't usually have it. And double Shadow at Death. And Evangelism. And like that you can cycle through it really well, and I have still a ton of cooldowns available, which I could have used in order to be able to live through this cast. So all in all, not that dangerous, even on level 16. And now we get into the final boss of the dungeon. It's not particularly difficult. I'm used to playing it as an Evoker, or I have been used to anyway. With the buffs on Evoker, I will definitely try it out again this week. But yeah, it's relatively uneventful. There's a bit of a range trouble here, even if you don't play Evoker. That can be a bit problematic, and then you need to make sure that you hit these pillars, so the Adstone spawn, and you put the debuffs out to the side. I'm struggling a bit actually, keeping my people topped. I haven't that much experience with Rookery actually, because I've been avoiding it because of this boss. I really don't enjoy it because it's so messy with the range and so on. Yeah, but anyway, so essentially what you need to take care of, and even if it means using a big amount of cooldowns, is that people are topped off at the point where the big AoE hit comes out. The void what null upheaval is it's called. And yeah, we just lust here and burn in the burn phase, and then it's just rinse and repeat. This boss usually takes quite a long time, and you can see we do manage to kill it, and then we also have a little bit of additional trash to clear in the end, but it's just one more void stone, and yeah, we just go through the same sort of rotation of going through it again, and we do manage to time it. Actually, not that much time left, even though we didn't have many deaths. I think it was 3 overall, and we did have pretty good damage. I can actually show you from the log. So you can see we do have pretty good damage here. Our tank even did the 100% log. A few passes on Brewmaster, but still, chapeau. My damage, yeah, I don't know with how many Void Weavers I'm still competing at level 16. There will be a few, but I'm okay with it, especially given my lower item level. Could have been a bit more optimized. But I do tend to err more on the side of caution rather than optimizing damage before I know that I'm able to heal the encounters well. In terms of healing, I did well, so I did manage to heal rather well through it, 98th healing percentile for the key level. And then here we have the death. Yeah, you can see here with the Crush Reality death on the second boss. The Shadow Word death killed me. I did 450 1,000 damage, and I had 75,000 overkill, so a bit unfortunate here. And then the triple overlap in the end, and our Evoker who got meleeed. Okay, that about does it. If you find this interesting or helpful, you might also want to check out my Oracle Discipline Priest full guide, where I go into much more detail regarding all of the abilities and so on, which you can check out over here. And other than that, thank you for watching very much. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. You can also consider subscribing to my channel. I'd very much appreciate it, and you will be getting more of content like this in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody, and see ya.